When my daughter said she didn't need me anymore, I felt something break inside me, though I tried not to show it. We were in the kitchen that evening, the sun already gone behind the clouds, and the room smelled faintly of burnt toast and tea. She stood by the counter, arms crossed, staring at me like I was a stranger. "I don't need you," she said, almost casually. Her words hit me harder than any anger, any fight I'd had before. I smiled, even though my heart was aching. I smiled because crying wouldn't help, and arguing would only make things worse. I had raised her. I had spent years wiping her tears, celebrating her small victories, and holding her hand when the world seemed too cruel. And now, in one quiet sentence, she said she didn't need me that night. After she went to her room, I cleaned the dishes slowly, feeling the weight of every small movement. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you notice things you usually ignore: the ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the wind brushing against the windows. I thought about all the times we had laughed together, all the stories we had shared at the dining table, and all the small moments that made her childhood feel warm. But as I finished my tea and turned off the light in the kitchen, I heard something that froze me in place. It was a soft sound, almost like a whisper, coming from the attic. I listened, holding my breath. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I heard it again. It was a small, shaky sound, crying. My daughter. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't sure if I should go up there or wait. My mind was racing. Had she always felt this lonely, and never told me? Was this anger just a mask for something deeper? I felt my chest tighten, a mixture of fear and worry. Slowly, carefully, I climbed the stairs to the attic. The wooden steps creaked under my weight, each sound echoing in the silent house. When I opened the door, I saw her sitting in the corner, knees drawn to her chest, her face buried in her hands. The tears were quiet at first, but then they came faster, each one shaking her shoulders. I didn't speak right away. I just sat beside her, letting the silence fill the space. She didn't notice me at first. Lost in her own storm of emotions, I waited, letting her cry, letting her show the vulnerability she hadn't shown in years. That night, I realized something I hadn't before. Sometimes, the people who push us away the hardest are the ones who need us the most. And in that moment, I made a quiet promise to myself. No matter how many times she said she didn't need me, I would always be there. I would always listen. I would always love her, even when she thought she didn't need me. I remember my daughter as a little girl, full of curiosity and laughter. She had a smile that could light up a room, and a voice that carried her excitement wherever she went. As she grew older, she became quieter, more thoughtful, and at times, stubborn in ways I hadn't expected. We were a small family, just the two of us. After her father passed away, I poured all my love into raising her, sometimes forgetting to care for myself, sometimes staying up late just to make sure she had everything she needed. Our home was small, but warm. The living room had a faded rug and a few framed photos on the wall, snapshots of birthdays, holidays, and small victories. The kitchen was my favorite place in the house, where I made meals and listened to her stories about school, friends, and dreams for the future. We had rituals, too. Sunday mornings were for pancakes and laughter, while rainy afternoons meant sitting by the window with a cup of tea and talking about everything and nothing at all. Despite all this, there were small cracks in our relationship. I noticed her withdrawing, sometimes speaking less to me, sometimes snapping in ways that felt harsh. At first I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't giving her enough space. Maybe I was too protective, too present, too involved. I tried to adjust, to step back, but I never stopped loving her. I never stopped caring. She had her own world, her own friends, and her own struggles that I couldn't always understand. Yet I tried. Every evening, when she came home from school or work, I asked about her day, listened to her stories, and offered advice only when she asked. I gave her freedom, while still holding the hope that she would come to me when she needed support. But that hope had been tested more and more in recent months. The distance between us grew slowly, like a shadow stretching across a room. That evening, when she said she didn't need me, all of those months of quiet tension came crashing down. I could feel the weight of our unspoken words, the arguments we had avoided, and the love she was afraid to admit. I realized then how fragile our bond had become, and how easily it could be misunderstood or broken. But even as my heart ached, I understood her in a way I hadn't before. She was searching for independence, trying to find her own place in the world. She was struggling, perhaps silently, with feelings she didn't yet know how to express. And even though it hurt me, I also knew I had to respect her space while staying quietly present. I made my way to the attic that night, not with anger, not with reproach, but with patience and love. I needed her to know, without words, that she was never alone. If you're moved by this story so far, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more heartfelt stories that touch the soul. The days after that night were quiet, but heavy. My daughter didn't speak much, and I noticed the small signs of tension that had been growing for months. I tried to give her space, but the silence between us was louder than any argument I had ever heard. I felt her pulling away, like I was standing on one side of a glass wall, watching her life happen just out of reach. She started spending more time in her room, closing the door without a word. I would knock lightly, asking if she needed anything, and she would reply with a curt, "I'm fine." I knew it wasn't really fine, but she didn't want to talk. I wanted to bridge the gap, to find a way back to the closeness we had once shared, but every attempt seemed to push her further away. One evening, I tried again. I knocked gently on her bedroom door and said, "I made your favorite dinner tonight. Do you want to eat together?" There was a long pause, and then she muttered, "I don't feel like it." Her voice was calm but distant, and it cut deeper than any anger could have. I nodded and left quietly, trying not to let the sadness show. The tension grew in small ways. I noticed her avoiding eye contact, skipping family routines, and spending hours on her phone, lost in another world. I wanted to confront her, to ask why she had become so distant, but I hesitated. I didn't want to scare her off completely. I knew she was struggling, and I wanted to be the safe place she could come back to. But the distance was testing me more than I expected. One rainy afternoon, the rising conflict reached a new level. I had left her a note on the kitchen table, hoping to encourage her, to remind her that I cared. It simply said, "I'm here when you need me." When she came down, she saw the note and crumpled it in her hand before throwing it in the trash. She didn't say anything, just walked past me, leaving a silence that filled the whole house. I felt a pang of helplessness. I had tried to give her space, to show love without pressure, and yet it seemed like everything I did was being rejected. I wondered if I had failed her, if I had misread her needs. I sat quietly in the living room that evening, listening to the rain against the windows, thinking about how quickly the closeness we once had slipped away. But even in the sadness, I reminded myself to stay patient. I knew that anger or frustration would only make things worse. My daughter was growing up, finding her independence, and I had to trust that, in time, she would come back to me. I needed to be ready, to listen, to hold her, and to let her know that I loved her, no matter how far she tried to push me away. The tension was there, rising like the storm outside, but I held on to hope. Deep down, I knew that love could bridge even the widest gap, if I stayed steady and patient. That night, the house was unusually still. I had finished my evening chores and was sitting by the window, watching the shadows of the trees stretch across the yard. I tried to focus on something else, anything to distract myself from the worry that had been growing for days. But then, I heard it, a soft, muffled sound coming from the attic. My heart skipped a beat. It was familiar, and yet it carried a weight I hadn't fully understood before. Slowly, I climbed the stairs, careful not to make a sound. The wooden steps creaked softly under my weight, echoing through the quiet house. When I reached the attic door, I paused. My daughter was crying, not the quiet, controlled kind of tears she sometimes shed, but full, heartfelt sobs. My chest ached at the sound. I had never heard her like this before. I opened the door gently and stepped inside. She was sitting on the floor, knees drawn to her chest, her hair falling over her face. I sat beside her quietly, unsure if I should speak or simply let her cry. After a few moments, she lifted her face, eyes red and swollen. For the first time in weeks, she looked at me, not with anger or distance, but with vulnerability. "I don't know how to handle everything," she whispered. "I feel so lost, and I thought maybe I didn't need anyone." Her voice cracked, and tears rolled down her cheeks. My heart broke, but I stayed calm, taking her hand in mine. "You don't have to do anything alone," I said softly. "I'm here. I've always been here, and I always will be." She buried her face in my shoulder, and I held her tightly. In that moment, I realized that all the tension, all the distance, was not because she didn't care for me. It was because she was struggling silently, afraid of showing her weaknesses. The words she had spoken earlier, that she didn't need me, were not a rejection, but a shield, a way to protect herself when she felt overwhelmed. I stayed with her for hours that night, listening to her fears, her regrets, and her worries. We didn't solve everything in one evening, but we took the first step toward understanding each other again. I saw the weight she had been carrying, the pressure she felt to be strong, and the loneliness that had made her push me away. And I knew that love, patience, and presence were what she needed most. That night, I learned a lesson I will never forget. Sometimes, the people who seem the furthest away are the ones who need us the most. Silence can hide so much pain, and words can be shields that protect fragile hearts. But if we stay patient and open, love can always find a way in. If you're touched by this story, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more heartfelt, real-life stories that show the power of love and understanding. The days that followed felt different, though quietly so. My daughter and I didn't talk about that night immediately, and yet there was a subtle shift in the air between us. The tension that had filled the house began to soften, replaced by a fragile but growing understanding. I noticed her lingering a little longer in the kitchen, asking about small things, sharing bits of her day that she hadn't before. It wasn't dramatic, no sudden declarations of love or apologies, just small, quiet steps toward connection. I learned to let her take the lead, to respect her space while offering gentle reassurance. Some mornings, we ate breakfast together in silence, watching the sunlight filter through the windows. Other times, she would sit beside me while I sipped my tea, talking about her schoolwork or her friends, her voice lighter than it had been for months. Each moment felt like a gift, small and delicate, but full of meaning. One evening, she came to me in the living room and said softly, I'm sorry for pushing you away." Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of everything she had been feeling. I reached out and held her hands, looking into her eyes. "You don't have to apologize," I said. "I understand. I know it wasn't easy for you. I just want you to know I'm always here for you." We sat together for a long time, not speaking much, simply enjoying the presence of one another. I realized that love doesn't always have to be shown in grand gestures. Sometimes, it is quiet patience, quiet understanding, and quiet support that make the biggest difference. I felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that the bond we shared had not been broken, only tested. From that point onward, I made a small habit of leaving little notes for her, reminders that I cared. Sometimes it was a simple "good luck on your test" or "I love you" tucked into her bag. Other times, it was a cup of tea waiting on the table when she returned from a long day. She started responding in her own small ways, a smile, a soft thank you, or a note of her own. These gestures didn't need to be loud or dramatic. They were proof that the bridge between us was slowly being rebuilt. Looking back, I understood that the conflict had not been a failure. It had been a lesson for both of us in patience, empathy, and the quiet strength of love. It reminded me that children, even grown ones, may struggle in ways we don't always see. But love, when steady and unconditional, has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. Every time I see her now, I feel a gentle gratitude that we found each other again, and that we can walk forward together, not without challenges, but with understanding, compassion, and a renewed bond that neither of us will take for granted. As the days turned into weeks, our home felt lighter. The tension that had once lingered like a heavy fog slowly began to lift. My daughter and I didn't always talk about the past, and we didn't need to. Our connection had quietly strengthened in the small ways: a shared cup of tea, a smile across the kitchen table, a note left on her bed. These little gestures reminded us both that love doesn't always need words. Sometimes, it just needs presence. I often think about that night in the attic, the night I heard her crying. It was a turning point, not because of the words spoken, but because of the silence that followed and the understanding that grew between us. I realized that children, even grown ones, carry burdens we may never fully know, and sometimes, their anger or distance is not a rejection of us, but a reflection of the struggles they are facing within themselves. I learned to approach my daughter with patience, to listen without judgment, and to offer comfort without expectation. I discovered that love, when given freely and consistently, has the power to reach even the most closed-off heart. I didn't need her to say she loved me, or to explain why she had pushed me away. Her presence, her small gestures, and her willingness to let me back into her world were enough. There were quiet mornings when we would sit together, watching the sunlight stream through the windows, or rainy afternoons when we shared stories over tea. Each moment, no matter how small, became a reminder of what truly matters. Life is fragile, relationships are precious, and understanding patient. Kind understanding is the key to keeping love alive. Looking back, I feel gratitude rather than regret. Gratitude for the chance to be there when she needed me most, even when she didn't know it. Gratitude for the strength to remain calm, to stay steady, and to trust that love will find a way. And gratitude for the reminder that even in our darkest moments, compassion and patience can heal wounds that words alone cannot. If there is one lesson I hope to share, it is this: never give up on the people you love. Sometimes, the ones who seem to push you away the most are the ones who need you the most. Be patient, be present, be gentle. Your love can make a difference, even when it feels like no one is listening. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more emotional, real-life stories that inspire hope, love, and understanding. Your support helps keep these stories alive and reaches people who may need them most. In the weeks that followed, I began to notice a change in my daughter. Not a sudden transformation, but a gentle, quiet shift. She started sharing small pieces of her world with me again. At first, it was little things. A book she had enjoyed, a song she liked, or a story from school. But gradually, she began talking about her feelings, the things that had weighed on her heart, and the fears she had kept to herself. It felt like discovering a secret garden, fragile, tender, but full of life. One evening, we sat together in the living room, the soft glow of a lamp casting shadows across the walls. She spoke about her struggles at work, the pressure she felt from expectations, and how sometimes she felt alone, even in a crowded room. I listened quietly, nodding, offering comfort when she hesitated or faltered. I didn't rush her, didn't try to fix things. I simply let her speak. And in that space, I felt the walls between us slowly dissolving. We began to create small routines that felt healing. Sometimes, we cooked together, laughing quietly as we made mistakes in the kitchen. Other times, we sat by the window during rainy afternoons, sipping tea and talking about dreams and hopes for the future. These moments weren't dramatic or grand, but they were powerful. They reminded us both of the bond we had once shared and showed that it could grow stronger. Even after moments of distance and misunderstanding, I noticed her smile returning in small ways, a glance, a laugh at something silly I said, a soft thank you when I did something thoughtful. These gestures, though simple, were like sunlight breaking through clouds. They reminded me that healing takes time, that love isn't always loud, and that the quiet presence of someone who cares can be more powerful than any words of apology or explanation. There were still moments of tension, of course. She would sometimes withdraw or speak sharply when overwhelmed, but I had learned to meet these moments with patience rather than frustration. I stayed calm, offered a gentle hand or a comforting word, and waited. Over time, even those small conflicts became opportunities to understand each other better and to build trust. One day, she came to me with a small note she had written herself. It said simply, "Thank you for being here, even when I didn't know I needed you." My eyes filled with tears, but I held them back. I felt a deep warmth in my heart, a quiet joy that could not be shaken. It was a reminder that love, patience, and presence, even in the hardest moments, can reach the deepest corners of a person's heart. Through these weeks, I realized that the journey of reconnection wasn't just about her learning to trust me again. It was about both of us growing together, learning how to be patient, kind, and understanding, and discovering that love is most powerful when it is steady, calm, and unwavering. As time went on, the quiet moments we shared became the heart of our relationship. My daughter and I had learned to communicate without force, to understand without judgment, and to love without expectation. The house felt warmer again, not because anything had changed materially, but because the walls carried laughter, soft conversations, and the reassurance that we were truly present for each other. I watched her grow in confidence, not in a boastful way, but in a way that came from feeling safe and supported. She began making choices with more clarity, expressing herself openly, and sharing her joys and struggles without fear. And each time she did, I felt the quiet pride that comes from knowing that patience and love can heal even the deepest divides. There were still occasional misunderstandings, moments when she would retreat into herself, or when I worried that the distance might return. But I had learned a powerful truth: relationships, like life itself, are not perfect. They require gentle attention, empathy, and the willingness to be present, even when it's hard. I realized that love isn't just about grand gestures or dramatic reconciliations. It's about showing up day after day, with a heart open and steady. One evening, we sat together in the kitchen, sharing tea as the sun set and painted the walls with a golden glow. She looked at me with a softness in her eyes I hadn't seen in a long time, and said, "I'm glad you didn't give up on me." I smiled, feeling a warmth that words cannot fully capture. "I would never give up on you," I replied, "because you are my daughter, and I love you always." In that moment, I understood something deeply important. Life is fragile, and our time with the people we love is precious. Misunderstandings, distance, and hurt may come, but they can be mended with patience, compassion, and unwavering care. Our bond had been tested, but it had not been broken. Instead, it had grown stronger, more resilient, and filled with quiet trust and love that needed no words. That as I reflect on this journey, I want anyone listening to remember this. Sometimes the ones who push us away the most are the ones who need us the most. Stay calm, stay patient, stay present. Love quietly, deeply, and without expectation. Your care can reach places words cannot, and it can heal hearts in ways you may never fully see. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more real-life, emotional stories. Your support helps these stories reach others who may need hope, comfort, and a reminder of the power of love.